Hello
Hi.
everyone on YouTube, it is us, Mona and Lisa here, and we wanted to jump in front of the camera and film a quick update video and say hi and just
Check in
with all of you. And maybe give you a summary of what has been happening in 2020 for us, because it's been a crazy year and we wouldn't blame you if you missed some of the things that maybe happened for us in the musical realm. So we wanted to give you a update. And
So despite all the madness of this year, we actually managed to release 2 albums. One of them was the duo sessions, which came out in June, and there was a collection of acoustic, stripped back originals and covers. So that came out a while ago, and only this month we released Live at the Cavern Club, which is a live double album recorded at the Cavern Club in Liverpool, and that has 28 live songs. We've also been sharing some of the videos on the channel, so you've been seeing all of that. That's kept us busy and sane this year, really. And the third album also had a lot with that, and we are working on original music and nearly squeezed in a third album this year, but we decided to postpone it to 2021. So working on our own music really helped us sort of ground and collect our thoughts for over the last few months, which has been really helpful. So loads to share with you next year as well. But the other reason we're here today is because we've got something in the mail. We got some mail.
If you have been around on YouTube for a while, you will know what this means. And if not, you will see in a second.
Yeah, and if you've been around our channel for a while, you might remember that in January we reached 100,000 YouTube subscribers. So as a thank you from YouTube, we got this. A little bit late, nearly a year, but we're very excited to open this. And we thought we'd do it on the channel since, you the subscribers made this possible. So let's all do it, okay?
It is time.
We kind of grew up with YouTube. We might be the first generation that really had YouTube as part of their childhood. Should show them as well. There's a nice protective layer. Ooh!
Wait, this is making me emotional.
Really?
I didn't expect it. Why am I crying?
Nice! I'm quite proud of this.
I'm so proud of this. Presented to MonaLisa twins for passing 100,000 subscribers. We got our own silver play button.
Nice, and it's all actually because of you.
Because
you
of you.
clicked the stupid subscribe button.
And you know that, only now a year later we already have 150,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So it's really been going super well here on YouTube for us. So we thank you all for watching the videos and sharing them and commenting and spreading the love. Whenever we're in a bad mood, all we have to do is go to the YouTube comment section, which is counterintuitive because normally I hate the YouTube comment section.
Right? YouTube has this kind of, what's the word? A reputation of the comments always being mean, but we're so lucky that you are also kind.
It's a mirror. You can see yourself. That's what you look like to us. Hang on, can you see? Oh no, you can't. Well, you're a camera now today. But in real life, you're all people. Like the person who is watching right now is like an actual person sitting somewhere and listening to our music. So you are awesome.
Ooh,
Woo!
nice.
Got a little emotional there for a second. Didn't think I would.
I think it's because we, like you said, it's part of our childhood and of us growing up, because we grew up on YouTube and with YouTube, and we've seen dozens of them being opened by the people that we watch. The biggest thanks just go out to all of you that clicked that button. So thank you for making YouTube send us this. It's so cool.
And before we go, we want to leave you with one more thing, a Q&A video that we originally recorded for the MLT Club, which is, if you're familiar with Patreon, it's a similar concept, but it's on our own website. So it's a membership where you can support us, and every month you get loads of new videos and behind the scenes stuff and a forum and things like this Q&A video that we're about to show you.
We always theme stuff there. So the theme of this Q&A was stuff that inspires and influences our own music. So that was what the Q&A was about that you're about to watch. And actually, if you've ever been curious about the MLT Club and wanted to try it out, then maybe December is the perfect time for you to try it, because we'll be doing our annual MLT Club advent calendar there. So from now on until Christmas, we'll be posting every single day, and there'll be little daily challenges for everyone to take part, and at the end we'll give away loads of stuff and prizes. So it might be a fun time to join if that's ever something you considered. But now we want you to enjoy the video and to have a great day, and we want to say a big thank you for this.
We'll see you again in just a few days with a new Christmas video that's coming out.
It's in the works right now, should be done in just a couple of days. So keep an eye on your subscription box and we'll talk to you very soon. Enjoy the Q&A.
Okay, thank you.
Stay groovy.
Stay groovy.
Bye.
Bye. First question.
Okay, so quite a lot of you wanted to know what got us and who got us into singing harmonies. So kind of what bands were our teachers in that regard and who taught us the most.
Okay, so the first memory I have of us singing harmonies was in the car with our dad. We would be singing all the time and we'd start doing canons, is that what it's called? Like where one person would keep singing one phrase and the other ones would start later and would result in harmonies. So we would do that quite a lot.
We used to sing Beach Boys, Barbara Ann in the car all the time.
Because it was from the cheese advert.
Ba 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 baby bell.
Hey, mein Käse.
11-year-old kids care about Baby Bell.
Baby Bell. And we did Mr. Tambourine Man a lot because we were practicing for our live show back in 2006, our first big thing that we did with our family.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me.
So we'd always sit around the kitchen table and sing Mr. Tambourine Man.
So that's the
Michaela
Birds.
as well.
Birds, Beatles,
Of course.
Beach Boys, Simon Garfunkel.
Yeah, later on.
Everly Brothers. Those are probably the top 5. I mean, it comes to no surprise, I'm sure, but those were our biggest influences for harmony singing. Matt wants to know if we ever took singing lessons or were in a choir as kids. So did that influence us?
We were in the primary school choir. Remember that?
I completely forgot about this until you just mentioned it.
But we didn't sing harmonies with them. It was just all of us singing the kids' songs at the same time. So it wasn't a proper choir, but it was fun. It got us singing.
And then we only took lessons for a few months during high school for like a half a year maybe. But that didn't last very long. And then in Australia, shortly before we left school, that was our last few months of school were spent in Australia, and we joined the choir there, which was actually quite good. It was lots of harmonies and it was more advanced.
Michael asks, were there any female singers or groups that influenced you?
Well, number 1 would be either Joni Mitchell or Janis Joplin. Those two we listened to ever since our childhood. And
Melanie as well.
Melanie
was playing all the time when we were young.
That's true. Actually, those 3 have probably the biggest influence on us musically. Mama Cass to some extent, yeah.
Andrew Sisters.
I don't
Nora
know, I
Jones
only
was playing
recently
a lot.
got into the Andrew Sisters and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they're a big influence. We always gravitate towards the guy voices, male rock and roll bands.
Also when we cover stuff.
Dale asks, having been raised in Austria with its rich history of classical music, have the likes of Mozart and Schubert inspired you?
Well, I don't know. I think if anything, it's subconscious because we've never really sat down and studied any of the big composers. Even though, I mean, it was part of the school curriculum and it's always around, but it's not like one of our own interests that we've developed. It's such a big part of Austrian culture that I think we know many of the songs without actually knowing them. As in when we hear a song, we know how the melody continues and that sort of thing without knowing who the composer is.
It's part of our DNA, I think. Maybe it comes out.
The Austrian blood.
It beats in 3/4.
The only composer that we've delved into in more detail would be Gershwin, who isn't Austrian.
Yeah,
but he's the
count.
only guy that we studied a little bit closer. And because that's also the sort of thing we really enjoy, like mixing it with more popular and jazzy elements. That's our jam. Are you ready for another one?
I'm ready for another one!
Rick Ross says, on your album Orange, I noticed some hits of blues and or jazz influences in a couple of songs. Sweet Lorraine for one. I was wondering who your personal jazz and blues influences are and have been.
Okay, so blues is a little easier to pinpoint where the inspiration comes from, I think, because when we were young, our parents played a lot of rock blues rock is the name. Eric Clapton was huge in our household.
Always playing.
Was always on. B.B. King was on a lot. Gary Moore was on a lot. So blues music really was with us from the start. So that's how we got absorbed that, I think.
And I think jazz It's a bit trickier. Well, Dad recorded a lot of jazz musicians. Dad had a recording studio in Austria, and he would record, especially later on in his career, a lot of jazz musicians.
So we heard that a
it
little
then.
bit.
So it was always also part of what we listened to and were exposed to.
Yeah, and I had a phase where I listened to a lot of old female jazz singers. So Billie Holiday, Nina Simone, Etta Jones, Ella Fitzgerald, those kind of voices. So maybe that influenced us a little bit. I mean, it came to play on Orange quite a bit. John has an interesting question, and he actually wants 10, but I'll ask you for 3. 3 of your favorite guitar solos off the top of your head that influence you as a guitarist.
Okay, well, let's go with the Beatles one first. And Your Bird Can Sing has a
Yeah,
great
I'd
like,
say that.
intro, outro, and solo, because I love harmonic solos. When it comes to sound, I maybe pick The Who's Leaving Here. Pete Townsend does a great, really
That's a great
short,
one.
nothing special about the solo, but I just love the tone of it. It just fits perfect within the song. And then go for Queen's Killer Queen.
Yeah, Queen's
Killer Queen's Killer Queen. Yeah, I love melodic solos like
That's
that.
a good one. Okay, so that's 3. Claude asks, the very bright guitar sound, when did that start and where did it come from? Cut Night Show.
Well, just by covering lots of Beatles stuff. What are you doing? Why are you drinking? Well, just by playing lots of Beatles songs and lots of early 60s songs and covering that and sort of emulating the George Harrison tone and the early rock and roll sort of stuff.
Yeah, his
They
sound
always
was
had really
bright.
twangy, boxy, gretchy guitar sounds.
You don't
So I
hear
wanted
that
to
much anymore in today's music, right? So it stands out immediately, even if you just do it a little bit. So that's where it came from, right? George Harrison. Chung asks, who are your favorite guitarists? And is there any particular one that influences you? Especially in your originals. And then Ari also asks, Lisa, who has influenced your guitar playing most?
Well, there's people I like to listen to, and then there's people that inspire me. As in, people that I want to try to sound like, and then just music that I just enjoy listening to. And the same applies to guitarists.
There's a difference?
Yeah.
Okay, well, who's
Okay, like when we cover songs with it's obviously like people like Pete Townsend or obviously George Harrison, Eric Clapton, Stephen Stills. Like that's the bands that we cover. So those are the guitarists. So that's the sort of style that I tried to copy when we first started off and when we played live and things like that. So I would say that directly influenced my playing because it's what we learned. But then there's like Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimi Hendrix or like Tommy Manuel or
well,
Chet Atkins.
you just can't play like them, that's right.
Yeah, but like but I'm not working on my Chet Atkins fingerpicking style
Yeah, okay, I
at
see.
the moment. Even though like I listen to them in my spare time. You know what I mean?
get it.
Or like even like more modern stuff like John Mayer or this guy that I follow on Instagram, Mateus Asato. And I could
Yes,
listen to
he's
that
great.
stuff all day long, but it's not something that I'm actually.
You don't aspire
I'm
to
putting
learn
effort
that.
into playing like that because it's such a different direction for the music that we want to produce, which isn't only tied to my guitar playing. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Ari wants to know the same thing from me about drummers, so what drummers influence me. And I always say that Ringo Starr and Keith Moon are my tied for number 2 drummers. Ringo for obvious reasons because of how innovative and how musical his playing was, and Keith Moon just because he's crazy and I loved it. And who else is there? Steve Gadd, he's Paul Simon's. He played a lot with Paul Simon. He's great. Ginger Baker, of course. Cheng Zhen wants to know, if you could go back to the 60s for 10 years, would you choose to be mentored by anyone? And what types of songs would you be writing more on?
Okay, so mentored.
I can't imagine
I
being
can't imagine
mentored by
being-
anyone.
Yeah,
at
being
that
mentored
time.
by the guys or by the people by our idols from the 60s. I don't think they'd be particularly good mentors, especially at the time. I don't think so. Well, maybe like having our own George Martin sort of thing. I mean, we have our own George Martin. That's our George Martin.
Yeah, a little
anyway.
bit.
But you know, I think having someone like that to guide you and to help you musically and just make you not go too crazy, that'd be good in the 60s. And what was the other question?
What kind of songs would you be writing more on?
Well, I think what was so great about that period in time was that pop, mainstream pop was so good, I think.
Yeah, what we like anyway.
Well, to us, because we're into that sort of music, but I think there was so much inspiration to be drawn from mainstream, which for us is not happening these days. Like, we don't get inspired when we turn on the radio.
Yeah.
But I think what was cool was those artists
Inspired each other, right?
So it's hard
God
to
knows what would have happened. We would have been inspired directly by that stuff coming out if we were around at the time. It's hypothetical. Gary asks, I'd like to know how having a producer, music engineer, hobby electrician and aeronautical,
I think.
airplane engineer for a father influenced your musical direction.
I mean, it does in a huge way. You all know, like, we write songs together, we live together, we work together. So, yeah, it's. I don't know many people like our dad, and I think the longer we are on this planet, the more we realize just how one of a kind he is.
I used to think everyone said is like this, but it really isn't. He's so. Like, he's like a little kid in a grown-up body, but then again, he has huge work ethic and kind of really loves problem solving. So we're so lucky to have him as part of this, and he obviously played a huge role and made a lot of what you see happen. So if it wasn't for him, I don't think we'd be half as far as we are now. So,
and I think he's great in capturing like the curious spirit about everything. I mean, I think we're quite similar in that sort of thing. That if we want to do something, we want to get to the bottom of it and make it like sound as beautiful and well as we can. But yeah, that definitely comes from him, and to just be curious about everything in life, and that helped having a dad like that. Who dances in the kitchen.
He did such a groovy dance.
Which non-Beatles bands from the 60s and 70s influence our music?
There's so many.
I know. But I mean, with the 60s, it's kind of all the obvious the bands, I would say, like
the era of
the Stones, bands. The Who, the Kings, the Turtles, the Hollies, the Zombies.
Yeah.
Simon Garfunkel with
Who. Yeah, Simon Garfunkel doesn't have the D. Cat Stevens is a little bit 70s, it's no D. Yeah. Lots of other bands, all the usual suspects. The ones people recover from, I think it's quite an easy thing to point to. We only play songs we love, so usually we love the whole artist for the most part when we cover one of their songs.
So Johnny P writes this really nice long message about all sorts of things, but his question comes down to, my question is, do you remember any aha moments when you heard a particular song or album and felt like you had just discovered a masterpiece? I mean, I think it's normally always like a gateway song that gets you into any artist, right?
Yeah, is he talking about the Beatles specifically? Because I know
he talks about the Beatles earlier, so maybe go for what your Beatles aha moment was.
Because I remember quite specifically extremely early on, and a very strange choice, but the song I first fell in love with, especially with John's voice, was Cry Baby Cry. Like, it's off the White Album, I think, and it's not a very popular, like, well-known song, but I loved it. I remember wanting to play it while playing the drums and singing at the same time. I practiced that. It was so early on. Everything was hard at that time. But that for me was a key song that made me fall in love with the Beatles and with wanting to know everything about them. So Cry Baby Cry is mine.
And I think for me, maybe around the same time was I'll Follow the Sun. I mean, we did end up covering it later on recently, but yeah, there was the song where I just like, what is this? Why is this so beautiful? And why do I want to listen to this over and over and over and over again?
Actually, two more. Fixing a Hole was another one that we obsessed over early on. And then the fourth one was their cover of Till There Was You. And we ended up covering that a few years ago. So we tried to do the songs that really mean a lot to us. And that was one of them. So those would be our choices. Jeffrey talks about how in the 70s and 80s many radio stations would promise BG-free weekends because of the disco craze at the time. And he asks if the talented trio of brothers had any influence on the development or harmonizing of what we do.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think because we actually also kind of wrote them off as just disco for a while, it actually took us until a few years ago to realize that they've done pretty cool stuff before that.
I think we knew some of the early Bee Gees stuff, but I never made the connection that they were the same band because it's such a big... It's a little bit like early and late Queen. It's such a difference in the whole vibe of the band. So it took us a while to even kind of dig more into the early stuff because we just wrote them off. But yeah, wrongly so. And they have some cool early 60s stuff.
But it hasn't influenced us in any way because it's more like a recent discovery.
Terry wants to know, were you influenced at all by the typical Austrian music industry? What about American country music? Okay, first part of the question, I think the influence of Austrian music on us, probably there has to be some because we grew up there. But the influence of the industry, I think, well, we moved away from that consciously to get out of kind of that environment because it's not the most flourishing, healthy industry there. So that we kind of, I think we kind of did our own thing very early on. And for country music, I don't know, we have so little ties to that,
To the American
country in terms of sentimental value or childhood memories, all the things that a lot of you guys probably have, the Americans watching. So for us, American country music can very easily come across as very cheesy and a little superficial. Yeah, I think we've never gotten into American country music.
I think
What
it's
can I
similar
say?
to the Austrian country music. It's just the most mainstream popular stuff is also quite cringy.
It's not necessarily our cup of tea, but I'm sure there's some gems hidden in there. Hit me with a question.
Dale writes another interesting thing. He says Thomas Edison is credited with the quote, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." That's a good one. Perspiration doesn't mean to sweat. Do you recognize any influence from non-musical sources pertaining, so many good words, to elements such as approach, attitude, or even philosophy with respect to artistry?
Yes, I think definitely, especially more so in recent years, I'd say. We draw inspiration as much from non-musical sources than we do from other artists, I think. So there's athletes and philosophers, entrepreneurs. There's so many fields you can draw the right mindset and attitude from, which I think is even more important than anything else, just like you pointed out, for success and a happy life. So yes, we draw inspiration from everywhere.
I think music is just one way to channel your energy of what you want to accomplish as a human or what you think life is all about. And for us, it's music. But yeah, I think you find inspiration everywhere in all walks of life, in all fields and all
Professions.
That was it. Lots of
Did it.
questions. I hope you found those somewhat interesting.
Thanks for contributing and leaving your questions. We'll also start thinking of a new topic for the next Q&A. If you have suggestions for that, leave it in the comments. Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for being groovy.
Bye.
Bye.